right? We'll have to watch and see. Because how do we know that 1/3 is a percentage and another third couldn't be linear? It couldn't be ordinal, right? I mean, it could be that the third and a third part of the trees, maybe it's all the trees in Asia that were destroyed. Right? Because that would be 1/3 of the world. It could be that all the trees in Asia were affected, right? Or all the trees in Libya or all the trees in Europa were affected. And certainly it's possible, and as we watch this unfold in time, if it's our generation, which I think we'll start to see these things ourselves, we'll have to ask ourselves the question if that's really what it is, right? The second angel sounded. So anyways, all I'm saying there is that all the grass was burned up. So we know that the entire globe. Now, how do you explain that? Meteorologists. Science is a religion. You get that, right? You hear... let's just pick global warming for a second, and I'm not going for or against it. I'm making an observation. There are religious connotations to the idea that the world is warming. There are. It's not just a matter of it being scientific. There are beliefs that we will never be able to prove. It takes faith to believe in global warming because we don't have 1,000 years. We don't know if this is cyclical, right? And that it ends up going back the other direction. It could be like this, but because we can only see a very small portion of what's happening with the polar ice cap, we assume that it's going to continue going that way and it won't ever come back. We don't know. There is a level of faith that has to happen in science. Consider Darwin's theory of evolution, right? On his deathbed, he said, "I'm wrong. They don't teach that in school." But to believe it, it takes faith. It takes more faith to believe in evolution than it does in creation. I mean, to think that something started as an amoeba, turned into a polywog, turned into a frog, and then into a human takes way more faith than to believe that God created humans. So we can't get away from the fact that science requires faith. At some point, you have to get back to the question, where did it all begin? Someplace. And without answering that question, it will always be a matter of faith. Always. So when we're looking at these things, we're looking at this, we're saying, okay, all the green grass burned up. Science is going to try to answer this. They're going to come up with some explanation on what happened. They're going to say it's a UFO attack. They're going to say, it's a solar storm. They're going to come up with something to say that the earth was pummeled with something that destroyed all the green grass. Because they have to, right? For the world to not believe in God, it has to always have an answer. Otherwise, you have to believe in God. So to not believe in God means you always have to have an explanation. And the way that you explain things is through science. So anyways, pay attention and watch for that, because it's been that way for probably generations, if not millennia. Verse 9. The second angel sounded, and as it were, a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea, and a third part of the sea became blood, and the third part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died, and the third part of the ships were destroyed. So there's this great burning mountain that falls into the sea. It kills a third of the fish and a third of the ships. The only place that can happen, and I looked this up, this is pretty cool. You can go out online and you can watch all the shipping traffic in the world. Cool site. I don't have it in front of me, but I'll have to find it and tell you where it's at. But just Google it. You can find it. You can watch all the shipping traffic. It tells you, like when LA was so backed up and they had hundreds of ships that were out there, you can drill into the ship. You can see what kind of a ship it is, if it's a cargo ship, what it's carrying, where it came from, the whole 9 yards. It's all real time. It's free, open to the public. The only ocean in the world that carries 34% of our traffic is between China and the west coast of America. There's no other place on the face of the earth that carries that much traffic. I looked it up because I was curious. Is there an ocean where a mountain could fall and destroy 33% of the traffic and the ships? And the answer is yes, it could. And it would be the Pacific Ocean. So if this great thing fell into the Pacific Ocean it says that a third of the creatures in the sea that had life died, and a third part of the ships were destroyed. Be pretty easy to annihilate a third of the ocean-bearing ships if something happened that was catastrophic in the Pacific Ocean. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is if a mountain lands in the Pacific Ocean, you're probably going to end up losing some shoreline. So everybody that's in California, Oregon, Washington State, probably are going to be swimming with the fishes at that point. Not to mention China and Taiwan. The third angel sounded, there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon the third part of the rivers and upon the fountains of waters. And the name of the star is called Wormwood, and the third part of the waters became wormwood, and many men died of the waters because they were made bitter. So this is a fun one. The third angel sounded, there fell a great burning as it were a lamp. Okay, so Mom, would you go do me real quick? Grab me the big lighter for the fireplace, would you? Just real fast. Thank you. So the third angel sounded, there fell. This says it fell a great star, a star, burning as a lamp. It fell upon a third part of the rivers. So whatever this was, it's coming like this, and it ends up somehow breaking up and scattering. But it didn't just scatter over a pattern, it scattered globally, because it says it scattered over a third part of the rivers, which means something had to have carried it around. So what John is seeing, he says, is, yeah, that's fine. What John is seeing is this, if I can get this to work. Okay, here we go. Ready? Can you all see it? You guys online see this okay? So here we are. Look at this and follow along. The third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp. Here we go. This is a lamp. Remember? We were talking about lamps. The menorah was a lamp. It's got fire, fire coming out of it. So what happens if you've got this thing? And remember, John doesn't have any idea what a missile is, and that's what I'm painting for you right now as a picture. What if he sees this thing coming like this? Flying through the air. It's got the flame coming out the back of it. He's like, that looks like a lamp. Because he's not going to say, oh, I saw a missile. Because John doesn't have any idea what a missile is. But what if it's a cluster? What if it's a cluster bomb? What if it's a missile of some kind? Right? And he sees it coming from the sky out of heaven. Right? Interestingly, the word Chernobyl is the word wormwood. So for those of you that are too young to remember Chernobyl, there was this incident known as the Chernobyl incident, where in Russia, in Chernobyl, I'm saying Russia, it was the USSR at the time, Chernobyl, and I don't remember the language, but there was a core meltdown, and they ended up, to stop the massive core melt, they ended up releasing all of this radioactive steam into the air. People were poisoned for months after that. Birth defects, all sorts of stuff. Water was unusable, and to this day, not too long ago, I saw a video on people that went back to Chernobyl. That was back it had to have been, I'm going to guess, 76 to 82, somewhere in there maybe, I'm thinking, somewhere in there. But just as of just a year or two ago when I saw this video, there are areas of it that are still so high, the radioactivity is still so high that you have to wear suits. The interesting thing that I see about this is that this wormwood star, it says that it made the waters bitter, and because of that, people died from it. So I'm wondering if this doesn't represent some kind of a missile, and the reason why, I'll tell you why in just a minute, why I believe this is the case, some kind of a missile response that has some kind of a nuclear tone to it that ends up destroying water supplies. And I'll tell you, and the next thing, here's the reason why. And the fourth angel, oh, by the way, wormwood, I believe if I have my mixology correct, wormwood is what gives the bitter taste to tonic water, if you're familiar with tonic water. The fourth angel, someone can Google that and see if I'm right, but I think that's right. The fourth angel sounded, verse 12, and a third part of the sun was smitten. Oh, hey, Mary, sorry, I need I should have thought of this, a styrofoam bowl. A styrofoam bowl. And the fourth angel sounded, and a third part of the sun was smitten, a third part of the moon, and a third part of the stars, so as a third part of them was darkened, and the day shone not for a third part of it, and the night likewise. So, here you have the fourth trumpet blow, and a third of the sun is smitten, a third of the stars are smitten, and a third of the moon. So think about this. How is that going to work? How are we going to end up destroying a third part of the sun, a third part of the moon, and a third part of the stars according to Scripture? Because this says, it says, a third part of the sun was smitten, a third part of the moon was smitten, and a third part of the stars, so as the third part of them was darkened, and the day shone not for a third part of it, and the night likewise. It can't mean that a third part of the stars were destroyed, they just exploded, and that the sun is now misshapen like somebody took a bite out of an Oreo cookie. Because all that would mean is that we still had the same number of hours of daylight, it just wasn't as bright.